Yeah, on Sunday, you already have the recording for the first half of the class, but I've made this in lieu of giving the recording for the second half of the class because, oh, well, some error between my head and my hands and the keyboard. I managed to not actually record the screen, which I think really would have made a lot more sense. So in the sort of final 30 minutes of the class, we did an exercise called Rose, Thorn, Bud, and we did that with a view to making sure that each of the groups has some clarity around what it is that they want to achieve and the best way for them to work together. So the Rose, Thorn, Bud exercise actually comes from the Boy Scouts of America. Luma, the design agency, use it quite a lot, but you'll see pretty much anything to do with design thinking is surrounded by Post-it notes. If you were working on doing something like this with your team, you would probably try and just do it with physical notes and a blank wall or the back of a door. But in these particular times, we can't do that. So I'm just using an online tool. There are plenty of them around. I'm not recommending this tool to you in particular. This is the one I'm playing with at the moment. And we might try some others as well. You'll get one over time that suits you if you need an online tool at all. So the Rose, Thorn, Bud exercise, as I said before, it comes from the Boy Scouts of America, and it's basically a reflective practice. At the end of each of their meetings, I'm reliably informed, I've never actually been a Boy Scout, so I don't know for sure, that they are asked to come up with a rose, a thorn, and a bud. So something that went well for them, something that was difficult for them, and then lastly, some idea or opportunity. So one of the great things about this exercise is it's a great way to take notes. And I'm going to encourage you when we meet with our industry partner to actually use Post-it notes to take note of the things that you notice, you recognize. What is a great thing? What is a difficulty? And then the germs of ideas that you have or the beginnings of opportunities. Often then we use a mind mapping technique to gather those things together. So what we might do, for example, and we're using this at the moment to think about how you're going to work as groups. So maybe you might start with a theme like punctuality. And because each of you have put down your roses, thorns, or buds, you might look at something. Punctuality is kind of a bad choice to make, but hey, I'll go with it for the moment. You might find that some people will say that they must have that, because the analogy we're using here is must-haves or yes-yeses, no-nos, the things they must never have, and the things that they would like, the things that are not critical necessarily to your learning, but would make the experience better. So if we're talking about punctuality, for example, you might say that some people will have as a must-have flexibility about start times, and other people will have must start on time, and somebody else in the must nots might have something like definitely must not be late, or must not run over time if we've scheduled a meeting. So you can gather all of those things together, and actually you can stand back and do what I call the Squeak Test. You can basically just sort of have a look and say, okay, in that area we've got lots of red. So actually behind me, I'm not sure if you can see it terribly well. It's actually just a to-do list, but don't worry about my to-do list. If you look at it, you can sort of see actually there's a lot of red up the top there and some more sort of yellows down the bottom. And that's actually reflects the state of my current work. Things that are red, they're urgent. They need to be done. I've moved them up the top. I've put them all together. Things that are in yellow are things that I would like to do, I need to do at some point, but at the moment, they're important things, but they're not urgent. In normal times, I like to have a pretty good distribution to make sure that I'm doing some of those important but not urgent things, that they're not taking too long. And just visually, I can just look behind me and I can see how the pattern is. Quite a lot of red in there at the moment. So basically the way this tool works, now each of you will have been allocated to a group and given a link. if you've got more than one link, use the second one. That'll take you to one of these boards that you can play with. And basically, it's pretty straightforward. There are some instructions that you can have a look at. But basically, all we're doing is, at this stage, is pulling out sticky notes. So people basically, all in real time, pulled out the sticky notes and said, this is what I care about. Let's use punctuality. Start on time. Don't worry too much about language and grammar. Don't run over. And maybe a would like will be take it in turns to have a chairman or a devil's advocate or something like that. Now, basically, we were time limited, always time poor in this. And so basically the whole group shared their yeses. And then we were able to vote on them subsequently. So I actually ran a voting session. I can show what the results of that looked like. So basically, a voting session is also a tool that design thinkers often use to try and avoid groupthink. So basically, everybody shares their votes at the same time, not paying attention to what other people do, and then they can rank them. So it's kind of interesting here that one of the things that came up very high for the group overall is being respectful of other people's opinions. Now, you can definitely use this to get yourself started. So then the idea is that people would come in, put in their no-nos, and they would also put in their would-likes. Some people have added to them since, but really we didn't have time to do that. Each of you has a board. Each of you has on this outline side that ability to work through, add things, comment on things, decide what are the top things for your group. But really what I want you to do is really just practice using this tool, but also think about how your groups are going to work. So your task over before we meet again next Saturday, and ideally by Thursday, is you are going to share with each other the work that you need to submit by Thursday. To the extent that it relates to the project, you will start to winnow down as a group into what your key project question is going to be. You are going to use that work to prepare for our meeting with the industry partner at 9 a.m. next week. They will be coming with us. So I want the groups, to send me questions in advance so we can facilitate that meeting. I will probably get the group members to ask those questions, but I just want to make sure that we get a good spread of questions to address your problems. We might even show the industry partners some of the journey maps you've made so that they can comment on that and you can start to gather that energy and that information. One of the things that you are required to do is a visualization, that a storyboard that tells us something about you. I also want you to share those with your group. That's what you would have done in the classroom, because I want you to get to know each other a bit. By the time we meet on Sunday next week, I want each group to have a name that reflects who they are and what it is that they want to achieve out of this organisation. I also want you to have a plan for how you're going to work together, and I'm going to ask you about it. And I also want you to have a go at finding the best way for you to communicate. Already I'm seeing some communications between members, looking at WhatsApp, looking at Facebook, Zolo, range of different features. You can use Teams from within Canvas. Don't ask me how, I'm not entirely sure. You can use Slack, you can use whatever is going to work for you. The first trick, and probably the hardest thing, is you've got to find a way to communicate with each other to get started. Okay, so that's all I wanted to tell you in this little video. It's probably gone for 10 minutes or so, I'm not quite sure, to do something that took us about 40 minutes to do. The trick now, for those of you who weren't in the meeting, is for you to start to contribute to the process. Thanks for your time. I really appreciate it. And now I have to stop.